Hi, I'd like to talk about endogenous retroviruses. Much of the information I'll be using came from an article called Large-Scale Functions for Endogenous Retroviruses by Sean Doyle in the December '08 Journal of Creation. Endogenous retroviruses are some of the most cited evidences for evolution. ERVs are said to be parasitic retroviral DNA sequences that infected our genome long ago and have stayed there ever since. The term endogenous retrovirus is a bit of a misnomer. There are numerous instances where small transposable elements, thought to be endogenous retroviruses, have been found to have functions, which invalidates the random retrovirus insertion claim. For instance, studies of embryo development in mice suggest that transposable elements, of which ERVs are a subset, control embryo development. Transposable elements seem to be involved in controlling the sequence and level of gene expression during development, by moving to and from sites of gene control. Researchers have recently identified an important function for a large portion of the human genome that has been labeled as ERVs. They act as promoters, starting transcription at alternative starting points, which enables different RNA transcripts to be formed from the same DNA sequence. We report the existence of 51,197 ERV-derived promoter sequences that initiate transcription within the human genome, including 1,743 cases where transcription is initiated from ERV sequences that are located in gene proximal promoter or 5 untranslated regions. That was from A.B. Conley, J.R. Piriapongsa, and I.K. Jordan, Retroviral Promoters in the Human Genome, Bioinformatics, Volume 24, Issue 14, 2008, page 1563. Our analysis revealed that retroviral sequences in the human genome encode tens of thousands of active promoters. Transcribed ERV sequences correspond to 1.16 of the human genome sequence, and PET tags that capture transcripts initiated from ERVs cover 22.4% of the genome. And that was from page 1566 from the before mentioned article. This again debunks the idea that 98% of the human genome is junk. These results support the conclusions of the ENCODE project, which found that at least 93% of DNA was transcribed in RNA. Evolutionists have used shared mistakes in junk DNA as proof that ancestors and chimps have a common ancestor. However, if the similar sequences are functional, which they are progressively proven to be, their argument evaporates. The failure to recognize, back up a moment. Evolutionist Dr. John Maddock, the director of the Institute for Molecular Bioscience at the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia, was spot on in his assessment of the gravity of the junk DNA error. He said, "The failure to recognize the full implications of this, particularly the possibility that the intervening non-coding sequences may be transmitting parallel information, may well go down as one of the biggest mistakes in the history of molecular biology." And he said that in The Unseen Genome, Gems Among the Junk, Scientific American, November 2003, pages 29 through 30. Both biblical creationists and ID proponents predicted that transposable elements, such as endogenous retroviruses, would have a function. In 2000, creationist molecular biologist Linda Walkup proposed that God could have created transposable elements to facilitate variation, or adaptation, within biblical kinds. And you can see L. Walkup, Junk DNA, Evolutionary Discards, or God's Tools, in the Journal of Creation, the Technical Journal, Volume 14, Issue 2, pages 18 through 30. If the junk DNA is not junk, then it puts a big spanner in the works of molecular taxonomists, who assume that junk DNA was free to mutate at random, unconstrained by the requirements of functionality. A. Williams, in Astonishing DNA Complexity, Demolishes Neo-Darwinism, says, "The molecular taxonomists, who have been drawing up evolutionary histories, or phylogenies, for nearly every kind of life, are going to have to undo all their years of junk DNA-based historical reconstructions and wait for the full implications to emerge before they try again. That came from the Journal of Creation, Volume 21, Issue 3, page 113. Endogenous retroviruses, or ERVs, are segments of DNA which, partially due to some similarities and their seemingly haphazard distribution, are thought to have resulted from past viral infections. Much of the human genome is supposed to be composed of such haphazard additions of DNA, a major component of the so-called junk DNA. Now, even if this were true, it doesn't support evolution in the microbes to man sense. That would require the addition of encyclopedic quantities of new functional information, like coding for new organs, etc. But ERVs would include only the transfer of relatively tiny amounts of existing DNA from one organism to another. And introducing DNA where it doesn't belong commonly results in functional loss, as people who use the gene gun approach to genetic engineering of plants have found. It would only be adding junk. This kind of downward change is the opposite direction to that required by evolution. A large portion of a typical genome consists of mobile elements or transposable elements of various kinds, and it is highly inaccurate to assume these came from accidental virus insertions. Some parts of human DNA that were once said to be endogenous retroviruses are now known to have important functions. According to Mager, Hunter, Scherzer, and Freeman, endogenous retroviruses provide the primary polyadenylation signal for two new human genes, and those are HHLA2 and HHLA3. And that was from Genomics, Volume 59, Issue 3, pages 255 through 263. Even after an important function has been found for a segment of DNA, many scientists will still refer to it by the invalidated term endogenous retroviruses. Transposable element is a better term and does not presuppose origin or function. It's interesting that 99% of human DNA was labeled junk before any studies of the so-called junk were done. This belief came from evolutionary ideas of the origin of DNA. Evolution, even given the best scenario imaginable, couldn't account for more than a tiny fraction of all the DNA if it was functional. The ever-increasing evidence of functionality presents a huge problem for the idea of molecules to man evolution. Of course, functionality is exactly what a creationist would expect to find in most, if not all, components of God's creation. Thank you.